There is a detailed hadith in Bukhari Muslim. The Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, went to worship in the cave of Hira for a few days. Sayyida Aisha is a narrator that when the 40 years of the Prophet's life began, his heart became oblivious to worldly affairs. And after taking some food from Sayyida Khadija, peace be upon her, he would go to the cave of Hira for worship. So the words of Bukhari Muslim are that the Prophet, peace be upon him, says that suddenly one day an angel appeared in front of me in human form. Gabriel, peace be upon him, came and said to me, "Read." You, peace be upon him, say, I said, I am not educated. He repeated this 3 times. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that I am not educated. Then he pressed you, peace be upon him, to his chest with force. And after that he said, read. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. ये 5 आयत. These 5 verses. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, read these verses again. Then there is the hadith that you, peace be upon him, came back. He said to Khadija, put a blanket over me. Sayyidah Khadija comforted you. That, O Prophet of God, peace be upon him, you help the poor. Be hospitable. They run for the people who are in pain and suffering. God will never leave you alone. Then she took him to one of her cousins, Warqa ibn Nawfal, who was a Christian but a monotheist. He had become blind. He heard the experience of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So he said that God has made you a prophet. And soon your nation will expel you from here. And if I live till then, I will help you. He did not live well and died before that. कि नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने कहा सैयदना वर्का इब्न नौफल. So the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, told him to Sayyidina Warqa ibn Nawfal, who was the cousin of Sayyida Khadija, that my nation will expel me. They love me so much. Obviously, in a person's 40-year life, he is the star of everyone's eyes, of the people of Mecca. So suddenly the person gets worried. How is it possible that people who love me so much, they will reject me? So Warqa ibn Nawfal spoke very beautiful words. He said that whoever raised this call for monotheism before you, this invitation is like that the opponents then treat him in the same way. Today someone is talking about monotheism and millions of people are listening to him and people are praising him. So he must be stating the same monotheism, that which monotheism Hindus also believe. God made the sun, God made the moon, God made the earth. So what do Hindus say Satan created? What Christians say Pharaoh built? What do the Jews say Nimrod built? No, they all say God made it. But as soon as he said it, not to call anyone for help except God. These people are buried in graves. Those whom you go and offer your needs cannot do anything. At the same time, look at the crowd of millions. It will be a few dozen. And the beating of this person will also start. Because no one wants to hear this monotheism. Because this is naked sword, that from which everyone runs away. However, what was ambiguous about it? It was this that the angel said 3 times to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. You read. So you said that I cannot read. I think that Dr. Isra's theory is correct. This is also the view of Maulana Maududi, that this is the first revelation. It is shown written in the form of a wooden board. That is why he has refused to read. Otherwise, even a small child should be told to read what I am reading. Read behind me as in your language. that child will also repeat there is no problem. And the age of a person is 40 years. And the angel said to him, recite what I read back to back. So there is no difficulty in that. Of course, they are not talking about oral reading. Rather, something written that was in front. That's why you, peace be upon him, said, I don't know how to read. It is mentioned in Surah Al-Ankabut. O Prophet, peace be upon him, before the revelation of this Quran. Neither could you write anything with your right hand. Can't read anything in any book? Otherwise, this thing would make the disbelievers suspicious. That you wrote this Quran yourself. It was your miracle that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was uneducated. That is when you have presented this word. So great poets have torn their words. Why? This is a very sophisticated word. And if there was something in it that you, peace be upon him, would have taken the apprenticeship of a poet, or used to sit next to a philosopher. So people used to say that he had been sitting for 40 years. Must have learned something. Even though he used to graze sheep. Or when you got married, then did some business work. You, peace be upon him, never had anything to do with reading and writing. And this is done by God intentionally, so that it can be used as a proof of prophethood. Our lack of education is our fault. Not being able to read and write to the Prophet, peace be upon him, is a virtue. Which was the requirement? This will be difficult to understand, but I will explain it to you with an easy example. Being a poet is Dr. Iqbal's merit. But being a poet of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is not his quality. It is in the Quran. We did not teach this Prophet to say poetry. And it was not worthy of their glory. We appreciate poets a lot. But God is saying, the glory of our Prophet is more than the poet. Because if you were a poet, so people say that he was a poet. So he must have written the word. By the way, there is a rhythm in the Quran. You know there is divine music. The verses are similar, although they do not have the same weight. It is a free verse style. As we say, sentences are small and big. However, there is a connection. There is also a connection here. There is a link within each surah. And this link is kept so that you can feel its taste. If it were in a normal reading style, so it was no fun at all. There was no enjoyment for the Arabs. It was not even for foreigners. And secondly, it cannot be stolen. In the way of reading, 2 or 4 sentences can also be added in the middle. But the thing is moving with this weight. Even if you take one verse and fit it in another place, it doesn't fit at all. Because the verses of the Quran are running with a rhythm. If you ask me to fit any verse of Surah Tayn, you cannot do it within this surah. It will not fit in context. So this is the protection of the Quran. So this theory seems strong. That something physical has been shown to the Prophet. And that is why people are convinced of this. That the Prophet, peace be upon him, after the declaration of prophethood, God had given him the ability that he could read from the book and could write a little. His theory is supported by this. Didn't have the skills but could do a little bit. The proof of this is the hadith of Bukhari. When the agreement was written on the occasion of peace of Hudaybiyah, so the disbelievers said that we do not believe you as the messenger of God. Cut Muhammad messenger of God and write Muhammad son of Abdullah. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that Sayyiduna Ali was his writer. So he said to Mawla Ali to erase it. Then Mawla Ali said, O messenger of God, I will not cut your name. It was an expression of love. That why I removed the name of Muhammad, the messenger of God. So you didn't mind. Well, the Prophet said, tell me where it is written. Companions said this is your name. You, peace be upon him, drew a line with his blessed hands. And there are the words of Bukhari, that you, peace be upon him, wrote with your own hands. Muhammad son of Abdullah. Now those who are strongly convinced of this thing, that the Prophet did not know how to read and write. This hadith is the bone of their neck. They say, this is what it is. That you wrote it means that you wrote it to someone. But lies are caught. There are words in the same hadith that the Prophet of God wrote his name. And the narrator of hadith says, but he was not skilled in writing. That is, your handwriting was not so beautiful. Because you never wrote. So the complete hadith is protecting that it was written by you. It was not written to anyone. So that's all you wrote. So those who are convinced of this thing that you learned to read and write after the declaration of prophethood, God gave you this miracle. So this is understandable. It is impossible to deny it with arguments. If someone does, then his own will. I'm just telling you what's going on with the arguments everywhere. This will not affect the prophethood of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Because it is after the declaration of prophethood. The Quran claims that before the revelation of this revelation, you did not know how to read and write. So they say, then it proved that after the revelation, God had given you the power that you could read. That is why you, peace be upon him, used to do proofreading of revelations. Proofreading will do the same. Who is speaking? There are two methods of proofreading. That you wrote something, then you said read what has been written. And he recited it. And the second is that you yourself will see what is written. It is proofreading both ways. So this is my belief. That if someone has this thought, so this position is justified. That the Prophet, peace be upon him, knew how to read and write after the revelation. Although there was no skill in it. So this is what it is. Read in the name of your Lord. So reading did not mean reading behind me. Otherwise, you would have read it the first time. Think for yourself. Even if you say that to a 10 to 12-year-old child, read behind me. So he will also read. A 40-year-old man who is skilled in speaking. A person is telling him to read and he says that I can't read. So it means that the thing written in front. And then the fourth time, the words of Bukhari Muslim. That the angel hugged you and then let go. Then said read. So he read it. By touching his chest, God transferred the ability to read to him through Gabriel. Understood. It is not impossible for God. This thing can teach anyone in an instant.